Have you ever experienced a person that genuinely saps your will to do anything from D&D to even existing around this person? Well, I have a story and a breakdown outlining each of these issues and how I think they should be solved. But first, sponsor time. Have you ever heard of DragonHeir? DragonHeir is a bold new RPG that is not content sitting in the box of any other role-playing game. The world is open and free, a true fantasy sandbox complete with snowy mountain passes, sprawling forests, and dark dungeons. The world comes to life with visuals that look like real-life minis, but we've all seen open worlds that feel empty as if they just take up space. This is not that. The world is alive with non-linear missions and side quests, treasure hunting, puzzle solving, joining in on a drinking contest, fishing, cooking, mining for minerals, and completing tasks for NPCs are all part of the adventure. You truly get to write your own story. Best part, you can take DragonHeir anywhere you go with a PC and mobile release. The game drops second half of this year. In the meantime, you can pre-register in the description of this video and also join the Discord server. See you there. To start off with some context, I'm a fairly casual D&D player, and I only play it with my close friends, and we don't get together very often due to preferring it in person and the distance between us. Because of this, we're lucky to get 3 sessions in on a weekend every 2 months or so. I'm fine with these gaps because it gives me time to focus on other creative pursuits, but recently I've started to dread it when a new session is coming up thanks to one friend in the group. I'm one of 4 people in my D&D friend group, and the problem player in question is Sorcerer. Sorcerer is a constant drag on almost every campaign he's in or running, and I don't know how to rectify it in the future. He's got a lot of minor issues that he just doesn't seem to realize he has, and that no one has blatantly told him about. But they've persisted in every session I've played with him. To start from the beginning, and by far his most minor issue is his unoriginality. In a vacuum, this is nothing to worry about. Not everyone is a Tolkien or a Martin or a Shakespeare. Writing is hard, and taking inspiration or just blatantly copying characters over can be understandable, as is leaning on stereotypes for your characters if you're new. But with Sorcerer, he's almost entirely incapable of making original ideas. So far, he's DM'd 1 campaign for us, and the entire campaign was just a railroaded retelling of the entire Percy Jackson story. He's the only one who has seen or likes Percy Jackson, but we agreed to do it because we wanted to humor his first attempt at DMing, and thought it could be fun to explore an unfamiliar setting. So Sorcerer started the campaign, and Fighter and I were the players. Problems immediately arose when we realized that we were just inserted into the Percy Jackson story as surrogates for Percy, and we were locked into the story Sorcerer wanted to tell. Anytime we wanted to go somewhere else or do something he didn't want us to do, we were denied and put back on the railroad. Even if we asked to roll for certain checks that would contradict the storyline of Percy Jackson, he would tell us that we failed because the DC was too high, no matter what we rolled. About an hour in, Fighter and I clocked out as we realized that we were just here so Sorcerer would have people to talk to as he explained the plotline of one of his favorite series. The campaign lasted 1 session and we haven't set up a second for it. Originality is hard to pull off in any story, and I don't think we're going to see anything truly original and uninspired by any other story. That's how storytelling works. However, there are too many stories of DMs just treating the players as an audience while they retell their favorite stories or fanfictions. It's cringe and creates an image that the DM has no self-awareness. If you're a DM or player watching this, steal elements of other things for your characters, but when you do, pretend that you're a Chinese company trying to make a shitty knockoff brand. You're not playing as Harry Potter, you're playing legally distinct Magic Orphan. Disguise it just enough to where the delivery seems original, but the story remains the same. Congratulations, you are now a storyteller, go write your own hero's journey. That was agonizing to get through, but we learned to just avoid any campaign that he wants to DM. Not everyone can be a good DM. It takes a lot of improvising and writing to do properly, and just because someone is a bad DM does not mean that they're a bad player. However, he has proven time and time again to be an unfun player to play alongside or DM for. Firstly, his characters are just as unoriginal as his campaigns. He has used 5 characters, and 3 of them are just carbon copies of popular characters from existing IPs. And the 2 that aren't copies just boil down to the cool, edgy character who doesn't care about anything. No matter how the group is trying to play, either with a serious tone or as a morally good group who wants to help people, he disregards what we're going for and always tries to seem like the coolest one at the table. For a very recent example, Paladin was DMing and Fighter, Sorcerer, and I were all playing our respective characters. Paladin is a really good DM, and we were at the end of the campaign where stakes are very high and it's very clear that we're supposed to avoid combat and escape while we can. The party's on top of a floating castle against an enemy that will kill us if we stay. Fighter comes up with the idea of everyone getting into his bag of holding, except for me because I was the fastest as a monk and I would take the bag with everyone in it and dive off the side of the castle. As the turns progress and the boss fireballs the party one last time, a beloved NPC gets mortally wounded and Fighter stuffs him in the bag of holding and follows him inside to treat his wounds. The fear of death is real, and Fighter and I are role-playing our characters as terrified and desperate to escape from a very serious situation. Then, on Sorcerer's turn, he completely shatters the mood by yelling up to the boss to get his attention, smirking and smugly saying, "You're a bitch," before flicking him off and diving backwards into the bag of holding. It was so bizarre to have one of the characters acting super cocky and cool, as Fighter comforted his dying NPC friend in the bag of holding. Especially when it was very clear that Paladin was trying to set a serious tone. Everyone else but Sorcerer took several seconds to process the awkward silence, and then we continued. My monk grabbed the bag with everyone in it, took a dash action, and leapt off the side of the castle. The boss began to fly and chase after me, but I got far enough down that there was a chance of survival for the group once we landed. Inside the bag, Fighter is trying to resuscitate the NPC as Sorcerer takes a long look at all of Fighter's stuff inside, including piles of gold, which he got earlier in the campaign. As we're falling through the air being chased down by the boss, Sorcerer decides it would be appropriate to try and steal a bunch of gold and jewels from the pile. Fighter, out of character, immediately gets pissed and asks him what he's trying to steal from him now of all times. But Sorcerer insists that he rolls a sleight of hand check to see if he can grab some stuff without Fighter seeing. The DM obliged and Sorcerer rolled extremely low, around a 7 or so if I remember. In his grief, all Fighter can do is turn around and yell at him to take his hands off his gold before returning to the NPC to treat him. As soon as he turns around, Sorcerer tries to steal again and makes another sleight of hand check, succeeding this time in stealing a gem worth around 50 gold. He then walks up to Fighter and offers the gem to him as a gift since he's, quote, going through a hard time. Fighter makes an investigation check and notices that the gem he was offering belonged to Fighter in the first place, causing him to yell at Sorcerer again before snatching the gem back. Out of character, I ask, "Sorcerer, why did you steal that from him only to give it back?" And he replied, "I wanted to seem nice without actually losing anything of mine." I could only roll my eyes as the campaign continued. This tone-deaf style of play permeates every one of his characters as he seems convinced to be in a different campaign than anyone else. A campaign where he's the plucky main character who's unaffected by everyone else's naive morals and emotions. This need to be the main character would manifest in another annoying habit of his. If he ever gets bored or thinks he has enough information to continue, he will tell the DM what he's going to do and expect the DM to immediately shift the campaign to focus on what he's doing, cutting off everyone else's chance to roleplay. This is a perfect example of something I get asked all the time. Hey CritCrab, I want to make a character that's dark and broody, but I don't want to be an edgelord. What's the difference? Well, I could go on a 5-minute tangent, but for the sake of this video, I'll give you the most important part in one word: execution. When making a character, you want to be a good writer with a deep backstory, that's all important, but even more important than that is executing the character correctly. What does that mean? It means that everyone will forgive you for having a poorly written or tropey backstory. Very few will forgive you for being a bad player. Just follow all the basic rules of D&D etiquette. Don't diminish your teammates, don't hog the spotlight, engage with other characters, be involved, be attentive. If you are a good player, you will be an enjoyable person to have around. That rule transcends character type, whether you're a happy-go-lucky do-gooder or a dark and broody, morally complicated character. Anyways, this guy failed both intelligent writing and being a good player, leading the party to see him as an edgelord. As an example, in another recent campaign, he was playing a copied character from a recent movie we saw, and Fighter and I were playing our own characters. Fighter was, once again, DMing. Our party responded to an invitation to a camp of monks, and we were stopped by a guard upon entry. Fighter explains who we are and why we were there. Before the DM can respond to what Fighter said, Sorcerer butts in with his own question. Where's the man who summoned us? The guard points to a tent behind him, and Sorcerer says, I walk up to the tent and look inside. Fighter and I wanted to talk to the guard more, and the DM wanted the guard to say more, so he tells Sorcerer to wait a second as Fighter and I roleplay with the guard a bit. Sorcerer seems to get annoyed by the fact that the DM isn't following him around and shifting focus to him, so in the middle of our roleplaying, he reiterates, I said I wanted to look inside. Fighter and I don't want to break up the group and have Sorcerer be the only one in the tent, so we finish with the guard and hurry to enter the tent with him. It's not that big a deal, but this is nowhere near the only example of him taking the party by the reins and expecting the DM to follow his character and his character alone, as the rest of us are treated as side characters. My last issue with Sorcerer is his attitude towards the DM. In my opinion, which is an opinion openly shared in my friend group, the DM's word is final when it comes to disputes. We all put a lot of faith in the DM to act fairly, which they mostly do. So we're okay with the DM putting the hammer down and denying when a player wants to make a ridiculous thing happen that bends the rules. This came up in a campaign I was running with Paladin and Sorcerer as the players. Halfway through the campaign, the party gets into combat with a wizard and his entourage of minions. Since Paladin is occupied with the minions, the enemy wizard casts a blinding spell on the Sorcerer since he was the largest threat at the time. After successfully making him blind, I tell the whole party that the wizard moves to a different spot after casting it. On Sorcerer's next turn, he tries to cast a firebolt at the enemy wizard. I ask him where he's shooting the firebolt since he's blind, and he tells me he's shooting it where he believes the enemy wizard is, and describes the location the wizard just moved from. He rolls to hit, and I tell him his firebolt passes through empty air because he can't see where the wizard is. Sorcerer immediately gets mad and says, But I shot where he is! It should still hit! And before I can even correct him, Paladin tells him, That's not where the wizard is, he moved after he blinded you. I'm glad this happened because it proved that I told the party about the wizard moving. Sorcerer just wasn't listening because he likes to spend other people's turns looking at his phone or his Nintendo Switch. Since he couldn't refute the fact that the wizard moved, he says, I rolled to hit, so I should have had a chance to hit. I responded, But you're blind. How is your character going to know where to aim? He avoids the question and just reiterates that he should have been able to shoot the wizard. I get fed up and get more stern than I usually like to be as a DM, and I tell him, I don't care what you think should happen. Your character was blinded and you told me you shot where the wizard used to be. It's not my fault that you were playing games instead of paying attention. You missed. Is there anything else you want to do on your turn? He stares daggers at me and says, no. I continue to Paladin's turn, and the rest of the campaign continues with minor annoyances from Sorcerer along the way. At the present, we still play D&D together because Sorcerer is the type of person to invite himself to every session that we get the opportunity to have. Every time we go to play D&D, I dread that I have to put up with his problems for the entire session, and it makes me want to stop playing altogether, which sucks because I really enjoy role-playing with everyone else. I just can't ask him to leave the session since we're all friends together, and it would probably damage my friendships. But I also can't tell him what to change because I'm worried he will take it personally and ruin our friendship regardless. For now, I just intend to keep playing with him in the slim hope that he improves. For anyone reading, please be mindful of how your actions at the table affect everyone around you. D&D is not just about you having fun. Some awareness and patience would allow everyone to have fun as a group, and these kinds of situations can be avoided. The easy option when dealing with people that you don't like is to just cut them off and move on. It's not always the best option, but it is the easiest and the one that I most commonly use. However, things get a lot more complicated when other friends and relationships are in the mix. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to these types of problems, but I am going to recommend an easy formula that I use when I end up in these situations. If you can afford to lose this person and everything that goes with it, including other friends, cut them off. You just meet a guy last session who continues to be a problem, cut him out. Easy. You lose nothing. If this person and their relationship with you and others matters, then it's my advice that this is a problem worth discussing. I recommend this approach because it doesn't seem to me that he's causing these problems out of spite or anger at you directly, making him possibly easier to communicate with. You know better than me how to communicate with him specifically, but you said yourself at the beginning of this story that nobody has confronted him about these issues directly. It's at least worth a try, because the alternative of just sitting around and silently hating him sucks. Anyways, till next time.